Hello, I'm Paul Herron, editor at Sky Blue Press, which has specialized in works by and about the diarist and novelist Anaïs Nin since 1996. This new video series concentrates on Nin's life and work, one aspect at a time. Before I get into today's topic, let me give you some context and some background. Anaïs Nin was born in France in 1903 and died in Los Angeles in 1977. She's known mostly for two kinds of writing, her diaries and erotica, both of which were rousing commercial and critical successes during the 1960s and 70s. Because the first volume of her heavily edited diaries portrays Nin as a young woman writer living independently in Paris with fascinating friends during the 1930s, its release at the dawn of the women's liberation movement in the 1960s was perfect timing. Young women scooped up the diaries and found in them a mentor, a spiritual mother, a guru, someone to be emulated. Her fame was at its peak when she died at the age of 73 of cancer, but even death couldn't stop the momentum of her publications. Shortly after, a volume of erotica she wrote for $1 a page in the 1940s, titled Delta of Venus, became a New York Times bestseller, and it was followed by a second popular volume called Little Birds. Nin's reputation as a serious writer was altered a bit as she was now seen as the godmother of female erotic writing. Her popularity then began to wane a bit until 1986 when Henry and June, the first of her unexpurgated diaries, was published, and which included intimate passages about her affair with Henry Miller that were cut from the originally published diary. It not only sold well, but it was made into the first movie to be rated NC-17. More than a decade after her death, Nin had a new audience, myself included. But in the 1990s, two publications nearly destroyed her reputation. The first was the unexpurgated diary Incest, which shocked readers, friends, and scholars alike by revealing that Nin had an incestuous affair with her father when he was 54 and she was 30. If that wasn't enough, the story she told in the original diary of an agonizing stillbirth was retold in Incest as a late-term abortion. Suddenly, sympathy turned to outrage and a sense of betrayal. Incest was published while Nin's brother, Joaquin Nin Cumel, was still alive. I can't imagine how he, a pious man who loved his sister dearly, felt when he read her passages about their father. Shame, anger, betrayal. Reviews of Incest were indictments on Nin herself and were extremely vicious and moralistic. Even some of Nin's old friends abandoned her. The second publication that harmed Nin's standing with her audience was Deirdre Bair's biography, which appeared 3 years later. While the book is well researched and a valuable tool for studying details about Nin, Bair clearly didn't think much of her subject. She judged her as a major-minor writer, implied she was a whore, accused her of callousness, deceit, and moral depravity, and perhaps worst of all, she claimed the diary wasn't a diary at all, but rather a fabrication, not a word of which could be trusted. Again, the critics jumped on Nin. They absolutely buried her. Soon after, Harcourt, Nin's publisher, declined any further work from her estate, and Anaïs Nin basically went away for almost 20 years. It wasn't until 2013 that her next unexpurgated diary was published, and it was an uphill battle to get it into print. There is an uptick in interest in Nin these days, but whether her reputation will ever fully recover from the disastrous books of the 90s remains to be seen. So where are we today? A TV series called Little Birds, based loosely on Nin's erotica, has been aired, and there are other video representations of her writing in the works. 3 new unexpurgated diaries have been published: Mirages, Trapeze, and The Diary of Others. A 4th is in the works. There's a new volume of erotica called Lettres, and reunited, her secret correspondence with her father during the incest years has been released. Her final unexpurgated diary will be published soon. Anaïs Nin is back to a certain degree. So, now that we're up to date with Nin, let's address today's episode. I will attempt debunking 2 persistent myths about her. Some myths, unfortunately, are accepted as true because they were either created or perpetuated by supposed authorities. One is Deirdre Bair's biography, and the other is a BBC documentary that many have seen over the years titled A Spy in a House of Love. It initially aired in the late 90s. The first myth presented in the documentary is that of nymphomania, which is obsessively treated in the first half of the program. We have an opening scene with a prostitute washing herself, for one thing. This image is supposedly inspired by Nin's erotica, which the narrator is reading. But the prostitute could easily be confused with Nin, implying that she was not only writing about whores, but was one. We have Peter Owen, Nin's London publisher, wondering how Nin, after making love to 3 or 4 different people every day, could stay awake long enough to write about it at night. And then we have Nin's friend, Lila Rosenblum, who more than implies nymphomania by uttering a complete falsehood.
And we passed an old-fashioned garage. I don't think we have many of them anymore. But it was a garage where people parked their cars and also had work done on them, mechanical work. And just in passing, she said, "Oh, I know this place very well. I have sex with all the men there." That's how she was.
I'd like to offer some evidence that contradicts the idea of Nin as an nymphomaniac. Before I do, let me offer my credentials. I've edited the last 4 unexpurgated Nin diaries, which cover the last decades of her life, including the volume in which Rosenblum appears. Since I transcribed these diaries from the handwritten originals, I can speak with some authority here. Mirages, covering the years 1939 to 1947, describes Nin's life after she came back to New York after a 15-year stay in Paris. She had just been torn by war from her beloved Paris, where she was finally achieving personal and professional maturity, aided by a close circle of artist friends and lovers, including Henry Miller. She re-entered the world of New York City, which was a severe cultural shock to her. Gone were the poets and artists, the cafe life, and publishers friendly to her work. Her relationship with Miller was dying, ending in 1942. While her other Paris lover, Gonzalo Moret, helped Nin with her Gemor press in New York, her relationship with him was becoming difficult and ended in 1946. And her marriage to Hugh Geiler, known as Hugo, had been faltering for years and worsened during the 40s. So, was she looking for sexual relationships with other men in the 1940s? The answer is yes. But with just anybody, including mechanics at a garage? Nin's lovers were artists, men with imaginations and artistic sensibilities, and above all, dreams. She was searching for the one man who was her equal, who could complete her. She recorded her affairs meticulously in her diary. If you've read Mirages, you know what I mean. But where were the mechanics? Not one word about anyone of that sort in the original diary, and she left virtually nothing out. It's a well-known fact that Anaïs Nin had no interest in ordinary people. And another thing, she didn't habituate garages because she didn't drive in New York City, and she certainly wouldn't have gone with her husband to a repair shop of all things. And it's important to mention that after she met Rupert Pohl in 1947, an out-of-work actor and 16 years her junior, he became the lover she had been searching for, and she was basically monogamous for the rest of her life. Why Lila Rosenblum, who called herself Nin's friend, would tell an interviewer such a story is beyond me. The second myth about Anaïs Nin is equally disturbing and perhaps more serious. The myth that Nin's diary is not truthful, that it's full of lies, that it's fiction. Deirdre Bair, Nin's biographer, went so far as to call it a liary. Let's listen to Bair explain what she means in the documentary.
I was always aware when I was reading these diaries of a terrible kind of irony, that she had spent her entire life living a lie on every level of her life, and at the same time telling herself, this is the absolute truth. This is the truth, and I'm telling the truth. But the truth was this enormous facade, this enormous construction of nothing but lies.
In her biography, Bair states that Nin took her original handwritten diaries and rewrote them with embellishments, deletions, additions, and had Lila Rosenblum type them up for her. That's not far from the truth. But when she says that Nin actually destroyed the originals, she offers no evidence of this and no sources. This is what I disagree with. Further, Bair wrote that she didn't know the whereabouts of these revised handwritten volumes, but she suspected they were in the Los Angeles house that Nin shared with Rupert Pope. As I will explain, this makes no sense at all. In 2007, a year after Rupert died, the Anaïs Nin Trust asked me to help sort through Nin's materials in the house. I spent 6 days there. I went from floor to ceiling, finding all sorts of hidden treasures. But there were no handwritten revised diaries, not a single one. And think about it. What about the diary volumes housed at UCLA? The ones that Bair read herself? If they're not the originals, which Bair says Nin destroyed, and they're not the revised handwritten volumes she suspected were at the house, then what are they? Was UCLA going to invest in fake or revised diaries and give them a home there? I don't think so. They bought the originals. Go see for yourself. They're clearly not revised versions written much later. We should also focus on why Nin revised her diaries in the first place. It was so they could be read by publishers. They were edited for 2 reasons. First, we're talking about 35,000 pages of raw material, much of which had to be cut to make wieldy books. Second, because Hugh Geiler and other significant people in the diaries were still alive, she had to remove the sexual passages to not hurt those involved. If Nin destroyed any diaries, and I've never seen any evidence that she did, she would have destroyed the handwritten revisions. Why would she need them once they were typed up? Nin protected her original diaries to the point that she panicked at the thought of them getting lost, and she had them locked up in bank vaults. While she sometimes pondered the idea of destroying her original diaries because she feared her husband would read them, she never did. So let's be clear. Anaïs Nin did not make love to every man she met, nor did she write a liary or destroy her original diary volumes. It's time to put these myths to rest and to put Nin in a new, more informed perspective. The new publications are helping to accomplish this. I'm Paul Herron. I hope you enjoyed the video. There are more forthcoming. See you next time.